people as they are going on the CPA journey is, right, you've got to set those expectations around. I was actually working on my master's degree while working full time. So long days, long nights, but I got it done.
So much for being on my podcast today. We have Jasmine as Assistant Director Campus Recruiting from Crowe, and I met Jasmine at AICPA Women Global Leadership Conference, and I really like her story, so I'm so excited to have her on my podcast today. So Jasmine, before we start talking about your career path, can you share with us a little bit more about yourself?
Sure. So I am Jasmine. I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I'm originally from New York and New Jersey. I am a avid reader. I love to travel. I once lived on a sailboat, and we'll talk about that a little bit more. And I currently am a roommate to my younger sister, who I love and adore. There's a big age difference, so she's kind of like my child. So that's a lot of fun. We got a lot of time bonding.
Awesome. And I look at your career path is a little bit different from traditional path that we go to from public to private. But your path is going to start from private and then public. By the way, it was my path too. I start in private and then go to public. But before you start in private, I'm just curious, why did you choose the accounting major in college?
Oh, okay. Such a good question. So this goes back to my older sister. I was getting ready to go to college and I thought I wanted to be an attorney. So I was super excited to get to school and like be on this attorney career path, working obviously with a political science major. And, this was going to be my path. And I went to go to orientation and my older sister was like, if you get to school and you don't really like political science major, what are you going to do? What's your fallback? And I had to think for a minute. And, she made a recommendation. She said, if you go to school and get a business degree, it's going to open up so many opportunities for you. You can still go to law school. You can still be an attorney. Just think about that, right? Like having this really good foundation. Nothing wrong with a political science degree, but I think she was trying to set me up on a path, right? To be able to become an accountant, become a CPA. And so that's really what lit the spark for my interest in accounting, was that discussion in 2007 with my older sister.
Wow, so you wanted to be a lawyer at the beginning. Is that because you love arguing?
I would say debate, right? Like,
Okay, debate. Okay. Good way to say it.
yeah, I think just the attorney career just fascinated me. Just different aspects, right? Being able to, as you would say, argue a case. I did a little bit of like debate club in high school. And just really enjoyed the environment, right? The research, the putting together your case, and then presenting that. And I thought that was the career path that I was going to be going on. So I still get to do aspects, right? Kind of what an attorney does, but it's not the exact career that I'm following right now.
Well, I think it's also pretty fancy being a CPA as well. So you're not taking the wrong path. It's just a different path.
Exactly, Rosie.
Yeah, and it looks like after you graduate with the accounting major, you start working in private first. I'm just wondering why you chose private instead of public when you go to all the recruitment process. They were recommending you, hey, go to Big Four, go to public accounting, and then you go to private.
So I went to college in '07, and 3 years later, I graduated with 2 degrees. So I graduated in 2010 at the height of the financial crisis, and there were no jobs. And so I left school with an accounting and a finance undergraduate degree. And I knew that public accounting at that time wasn't right for me. I didn't want to be in a very cutthroat environment. I didn't want to have, crazy long hours for a job, just different things that I had heard about public accounting. And it wasn't quite what I was looking for. Fast forward, and I learned that there are different types of public accounting, right? You've got mid-sized companies, you've got small mom and pop shops, you've got, local firms, you've got the big four, large, international firms. And so at the time, I didn't quite have access to that information, but also height of the financial crisis. And so there were no jobs. I ended up in industry through just sending my resume out. I partnered with a staffing agency and I was sent on an assignment to a company that did restaurant accounting. And so my foray into industry was doing accounting for restaurants, like in the corporate office. And it was very interesting. I learned a lot. I really learned how to do journal entries. I learned how to do accounts payable. Like I learned the foundation of accounting, right? Before you go become an auditor, I learned how to be an accountant, right? And like doing the day-to-day, doing month-end close. And so really understood those processes once it was time to go and audit them.
So you work at the restaurants in the accounting department. So did you have discount if you want to order food from the restaurant?
So at the time, yes, we could go into local restaurants and order. I used to work for Cheeseburger in Paradise. So it formerly was owned by like the Outback Steakhouse chain, and they went private for a little while and then they sold. And that's actually what shifted my job right at the time in restaurant accounting. So I'm at a point in my career where I've been laid off and, I get severance. I'm trying to figure out what's next. I built this career in restaurant accounting. I'm only a year or two in, and again, sending my resume out, I find a staffing agency. And this time, the staffing agency is like, oh my gosh, we have an opportunity doing restaurant accounting, and we'd love to present your information. I'm like, sure. And I go to meet the team, fell in love with the people that I was going to be working with. I even got to meet the actual like other accountants and really just sit down with them, right? And understand what's your day like? What is it like working for this company? And it was interesting to be able to have a little bit more control over the interview, right? It wasn't just like very formalized. I get to see who I'm going to be working with. And I loved that aspect of the interview process and really hung on to that as I pursued other opportunities in the future. And so I went to work for a company that ran prison kitchens and commissaries and all throughout the US, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. So I was a staff accountant for them, worked for a couple of years. And funny enough, one of my mentors came to work at the company I was at. She was a Crowe senior manager. She left Crowe to come be our chief accounting officer. And up until this point, right, I really didn't have an interest in the CPA. I didn't really know what my career trajectory was going to look like, but I decided, I'm going to stick with the accounting thing for a while. And under this mentor, she really kind of gave me the push that I needed to say, you know what, CPA and, that track is really going to open up a lot of doors for you. And I decided, all right, let's buckle in, let's do this CPA thing. And she actually got me an interview with Crowe. So through my mentor, through, that relationship, I was able to enter into public accounting after working in industry for a little bit.
Oh, that's interesting. She actually suggests you to work for her prior firm. So she knows that she's going to lose you. That you're not going to have her in her job anymore.
She did. So I think we were at a time, right, in the company, things were shifting a little bit. We were kind of going through a restructuring, and it was one of those things where she was like, the professional acumen that you have, right, like how you approach your day to day, you would be really good in a public accounting setting, and it's going to help to accelerate your career, right? Like you come in as a staff, you work towards becoming a senior staff and going on from there. And I think that she saw potential in me. And so she was highly recommending to go into public and kind of explore that as an opportunity.
I think it's so lucky that you have such a great mentor because she puts your own interest first, not her interest. Because if she puts her interest first, she would like to keep you at the current position so you can get her job done. So you were very lucky to have her as a mentor in your earlier career. And you mentioned that because of her, you decided to have the CPA license, and it looks like you came back to college.
Thank you for pulling that together. So I was actually working on my master's degree while working full time. So long days, long nights, but I got it done. So from 2011 to 2014, did my master's part-time, was working towards that 150 credit hours. And in 2014, was when I actually made the jump into public accounting. And so I took a little bit of a pay cut. I relocated. I started anew, right? And had an amazing group of people. That was my starting class. We were 6 people and just really got my feet wet in public and was intrigued by what I was doing. It was very, very different from month end close. And I felt like I had reached a point with being like a bookkeeper / accountant where I knew the journal entries I was going to post every month. I knew the invoices, right, that we'd have to follow up on, just the different aspects of kind of closing the month and making your way into the next month. And it kind of got a little monotonous. And so I was ready for something different, right? Every day to be a little bit of a change up. And I got that within public accounting. No 2 days were the same, working on different clients, addressing a deficiency here, right? An open item here, and following up clients. Instead of posting journal entries, I'm reviewing the support for journal entries and understanding, right? Like the sample that we selected for journal entries. And so I just got to see different aspects of what I used to do. But I think what really helped was having that foundation in industry, bringing that information into public. It helped me a lot more with the adjustment. And, school's amazing. It sets you up for the core of what you need, but that day to day, really getting into the details and having the professional experience, it is a game changer. And it is what's really going to make the information click for you with accounting.
Yeah, I agree with you about that because when I move from private, from industry to public, I have a better understanding about accounting, about financial statements, about all the bookkeeping process, about all the journal entries that we're going to make. So like this is what people normally tell me, that typically when they have new staff coming from private to public, they are very confident in financial statements. Then people, they go straight from college to public, they still very new. They may know how to make the selection to audit. They may know how to audit this specific testing, but they may not really understand behind the scenes about all the month-end closing, all the bookkeeping stuff. So I was on the same page with you. But I'm just curious, when you move from private to public, in public you have a lot of options like audit, tax, advisory, or anything else. But no, you went straight to audit. Did your mentor advise you that, or that's what you feel like you wanted to do?
Yeah, that's a good question. So my mentor was a former audit senior manager. And so she recommended that I go into audit. I actually also spent a little bit of time at a mom and pop tax company when I was just coming out of college. And so that's how I know how to do my taxes confidently. I plugged and chugged. I called people to follow up like, hey, you had this 1099-R last year. Like, I didn't see it in your information this year. And just following up those different things. And so I gained an appreciation for tax. Tax is amazing. You definitely need to know how to do your own taxes. It'll save you an arm and a leg. It'll keep you out of trouble. And it's also so, so important, right? Like, part of our economy is paying taxes. It's following up and reconciling on said taxes. High net worth individuals, right? They need somebody that's trustworthy and knows what they're doing, right? Like for their assets. So tax is great. The opportunity that was presented to me was in audit. Let me get my feet wet. Let me see what this is about. And, I love the idea, again, kind of going back to the attorney, the investigating, digging into things, uncovering. I really leaned into that as an auditor and I really enjoyed it. I will put this out here. So I come into public, I'm doing banking, right? So financial institutions, amazing team. I was enjoying the client, but the work wasn't clicking for me. And it was because I had my previous experience was in restaurant accounting, right? So I learned very traditional balance sheet, very traditional income statement. A bank is totally different, right? Like it's completely different, right? Their assets and liabilities are different. Their balance sheet is different. And so it was a little bit of a learning curve. And, I said, let me do this again for one more busy season, but it's not quite what I think I want to do for a long period of time. At the beginning of my career, fast forward, new mentor, I meet a person that was working on retail dealers. So they were in the car dealership world And I got to go do a small project on a car dealership. And I was like, I love this. This is so fun. Again, just very different work. The clients are very different, right? Different atmosphere. I'm inside of dealerships, right? Luxury dealerships, just, your everyday dealership, like a Toyota or a Chevrolet, and just got to be in a different environment, right, than a bank, and was enjoying it. And started very quickly to realize, okay, I think I want to do retail dealers. And so I pretty quickly declared my specialty to become a retail dealer auditor and kind of follow that career path. And so I did that for a while. And pretty early on in my career, I was able to move to remote work. So this is pre-pandemic, hybrid environment, and I was working remotely. And that was nice because I was able to be home. It also helped to cut down on my commute, right, when it came time to study. So what I haven't gotten to share, my CPA journey was kind of late actually in my career, right? So I come to public, I'm like, hey, I want to be a CPA. I know that I have to get my CPA license to become a manager and continue to accelerate. And I go into my first CPA exam. After my first busy season, I was like, I did audit for a busy season. I'm an auditor. I got this. I barely studied, Rosie, and the outcome was not what I wanted.
You should have no issues with the audit exams, or like if you do tax, you should have no issue with the regulation section. But it's not that case. It's not that case. I was on the same page with you. After you share your experience, I will share mine because mine just like crazy.
Yeah, so it's so funny that, we had very similar experiences. So I go into the test, right? I'm like, I got this. I came out with something in like the 50s and was like, soul crushed. I was like, all right, like, let me try again. Let me try something different, right? So I think I went in for BEC and audit, and I think I paid for another notice to schedule. Mind you, I don't have robust CPA materials. Like, I was just trying some different things. I had a Gleim book from college and was like, I got this. Not the case. And so I was like, it's not great. I'm going to put this down for a little bit. I really leaned into learning more in public accounting. And it wasn't until 2016, so now I'm 2 years into public accounting, that's when I hunkered down. I got Becker through my firm, and I found a way to hack Becker that worked for me. I made a lot of flashcards, took robust notes. I also paid for another 71. I think it's now Ninja CPA. Loved those materials. And those combination of things, I was able to pass the CPA exam in 8 months.
Wow, that's impressive. All 4 sections?
All 4 sections on the first try with Becker.
Wow, that's very impressive.
So like robust study materials were a game changer. Again, actually studying, right? Not saying like, oh, I've done taxes before, I got this. Not the case. Like the way that the CPA exam is set up, you have to study. It's book knowledge, right? Like they're not looking for the real world application of like how you do it on the job. Here are the rules. Following the rules, help answer and unravel this problem. That was my experience with the CPA exam, trying it one time and not going so well, but being able to pass it with really good materials and just being very focused. My husband cut my Netflix account, so I had, a little distraction, and I found a schedule that worked for me. I'm a night person, and so I would actually study at night. I would, work during the day. I gave myself off Fridays, and I studied the rest of the weekend.
Wow. And so I guess you studied these 8 months. Hold on. If it is 8 months, it means there's a period that you studied during busy season.
So I actually ended during busy season. I started testing in June of 2016, and I wrapped up in early February of 2017.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And like one more kicker, I actually saved FAR for last because I was afraid. Everybody says that they failed this one. They say it's the hardest one. And so I was afraid, and I was like, all right, let me get some wind under my wings. And so I was able to pass, I think my order was BEC, Audit, Reg, FAR. And kind of once I got a little bit confident, right? I was like, oh my gosh, I passed. All right, next one. Oh my gosh, I passed. Next one. And I actually pushed my FAR date out quite a bit because I thought that I was ready. And as I got closer, I was just like, nope, I'm not feeling good. I want to make sure that I pass this on one shot. And so now I'm in busy season. And I think I scheduled my test for a Saturday in early February. There were no local test dates. And so I had to drive to Tennessee from Georgia to take my exam. And it was like a 3 hour drive. And so, I started my day early and I'm like, all right, just repeating things in my head. Like I had my, sheet that I wanted to look over one last time before I went into my exam and was just like, I have to pass far. Like I worked too hard. I've come so far. I gotta pass. And Rosie, all of my scores were over 80. And so I studied too hard. But I did it, right? Like that was the important part.
Yes, it doesn't matter how long it takes, how difficult it is, but as long as we make it, that it's done. It's just funny that you so determined at the end, like I have to pass this in this first try. Mine is different because I work in private before, so I was confident with FAR and I passed FAR in the first try. But then I had trouble. I have issue with audit class when I was in college. And then I was like, no, I'm going to work in audit in public. I'm going to pass this audit exam with no issue. It took me 3 times to pass audit. And then in the last section, last time when I took audit, it was in the last month of the 18-month window when I already passed all other 3 sections. And I was like, with the same mindset you mentioned about Friday, you have to pass this. I was the same. I had to pass this audit section in this last month. So I literally studied 5 different study material in the last month. I was like, there's no chance I'm going to fail this exam at that moment, I told myself. So I think I studied Baker, Roger, another 71, it is Ninja, and 2 other small one. And I was like, I took all the exams. I even print out the audit report. And then I put it all around my bedroom, my bathroom, in front of the mirror. And I even remember every single word in that report. Like when I took that exam, I could just write the report right on spot. That I was like, I couldn't fail this exam, this section.
No failing. It wasn't an option. And I think something that is really important to point out is just the support, right? Like going into that process, it sucked. I missed some things, but also I did a lot in that 8 months. It was close to the time my husband and I, we eloped. So, we threw a very small party, a couple of parties for family and friends in a couple of states, but we took a big trip internationally. We had some family travel. We still did a lot, but I set expectations. And I think that's something that's really important for people as they are going on the CPA journey is, right, you've got to set those expectations around, hey, things are going to look a little bit different for a little while, but it's not going to be forever. And, I'm still going to try to be there for the really important things. I might have to sit out just going out on a Friday night. I might have to sit out for, a party or two, but again, big things, right? Like still definitely try to make those, but you make a little bit of sacrifice in order to meet the goal that you're working towards.
And you will be very happy about that once you're done.
100%. I had my people in my corner, right? They're like, okay, like understood. We maybe are not going to hear from you for a little bit, right? We'll still check in. And just having somebody in your corner just rooting for you, right? Like, oh, you got this. Like, you're so close, like keep going. I ran track in high school and so I ran the 400, right? Once around the track, an outdoor track. And that last 200 meters is crucial, right? Like you hear the crowd cheering, you hear your coach, right? Just like kick in. And I treated that really similar to my CPA exams where it was just, I've got people in my corner. I've got people rooting for me. I was rooting for myself. And I also had my eye on a prize. So at our firm, we used to have a international secondment program pre-pandemic, and you could go to London or Australia, and there were stipulations. You had to at least be a senior staff, you needed to be a CPA, and some other things. And so at the time of going through taking my CPA exams, my motivation was I want to go on secondment, right? I want to go work in Australia. And that was kind of my carrot that was hanging out there as I worked towards accomplishing the CPA exam. And I just missed the window in 2017, like passing all of my exams, like to get my application in. And so I said, okay, 2018, I'm going on secondment. Like I'm manifesting this, I'm going. And in 2018, I was able to go work in Melbourne, Australia. So I worked for 3 months down under. And then my husband and I took a month and traveled for a month around Australia and New Zealand.
Yeah, oh my God. Talking about traveling, you have such adventurous life that I would love to you to share with the audience about how adventurous you and your husband are. Because at the conference, Jasmine shared with me and people in the room about all the crazy things that her and her husband have done. So Jasmine shared with us about the life on the sailboat, also
Yes.
motorbike experience. Oh my God, that's all interesting stories.
I love it, Rosie. I love your excitement. I'm going to take a little bit of a turn in the story, right? Like a lot of the things I've shared have been really good and glowing, and I struggled as well. There was periods of time that I definitely struggled. So I go to Australia. It was a good experience as a professional, amazing experience, personally. But I come back and I figured out that the way that we're living in the US is very different than how people in Europe, say, or people in Australia are living. And I learned, right, in Australia, people go to work in order to afford the lifestyles that they want and just achieve the things that they want to do. Like their job's not their end all be all. And honestly, my career at the time had become, just laser focused, right? Like it was everything. And I was a little bit unsettled, right, from the experience where it was like, wow, there's a different way to approach things. I don't have to just put my career first and, I can still do what I want, right? But also accomplish things professionally. And that kind of led to some conversations with my husband. And we were like, you know what? It would be really cool if we could take a sabbatical, just like take some time off. Let's reset, right? And just figure some things out. And so in 2019, we pulled the trigger. We said, all right, we're going to do this. How we went about that was very interesting. We bought a 40-foot sailboat and we decided we were going to sail around the Caribbean for a couple years. Mind you, it's 2019. So we're doing this in August of 2019 and we are waiting for hurricane season to pass. It gets to be like Thanksgiving time. And so now we're like setting sail and we make our way down to the Bahamas. We're bouncing down the Bahamian island chains. And in March of 2020, we see that the pandemic is happening and we had some trouble with, buying food, fuel, and water on our trip. And so we were basically pirates at this point and had to make our way back to the States. If we were to get sick, the Bahamian infrastructure couldn't support us. And so we had to make our way back to the US. And so, quit our jobs in middle of 2019 to do this sabbatical, thinking we're doing this for a couple years. And, that gets cut short. And, we were pretty bummed that this idea that we had, right? Like all of a sudden it's thwarted, but it was a small chapter and it doesn't mean that we can't reopen that chapter, right? In the future and like do something very similar. People always ask, right? Like, did you know how to sail? No, absolutely not. I went to a week liveaboard sailing school and learned the basics. And my husband's a private pilot. And so sailing and flying, they translate really well together. So like he had a leg up, but it was hard. It's defined me as a person. I met some amazing people along the way and tying it back to my career, right? Like I thought that this break in my career was going to be really hard to bounce back from and like difficult to re-enter the workforce. But I had my CPA license. I had some amazing experiences in public, in private, working different places. I had also built really strong relationships, and those things set me up for success to re-enter the workforce.